You are not a passive witness to the world around you. You are not a neutral observer. And reality is not the fixed solid stage you've been taught to stand on. The truth is far stranger and far more powerful. Physics, the language of the universe itself, has uncovered something extraordinary. At the deepest, most fundamental level of existence, reality doesn't simply exist independently of you. It responds to you. It moves around you. It reshapes itself based on what you observe, what you focus on, and maybe even what you believe. This is not philosophy. This is quantum mechanics. One of the most unsettling and exciting discoveries in modern science is that observation doesn't just reveal reality. It may actually determine it. In laboratory after laboratory, particles behave like waves. Until someone watches, the moment measurement is introduced, reality collapses into one definite state. The wave of probability becomes a point of fact. It's not metaphor. It's not mysticism. It's the cold, precise behavior of nature when reduced to its smallest parts. Now ask yourself this: if particles, the very building blocks of everything you see, touch, and are, respond so dramatically to observation, what else is responding? That's the question that has haunted scientists and philosophers alike for decades. And it's the question that cracks open the door to a far wider view of existence. This is more than a physics puzzle. This touches your life in real ways. Because if observation plays an active role in shaping outcomes at the quantum level, then reality isn't locked in. It's fluid, potential-filled, mutable, and so is your experience within it. In this video, we're going to unpack that mystery with precision and boldness. We'll begin with the legendary double-slit experiment, the mind-bending demonstration that shattered our understanding of matter and ushered in the quantum era. We'll explore what it truly means when scientists say a particle can be in two places at once. And more importantly, what happens when it's being watched. We'll then examine the deeper implications of the observer effect. What is an observer? Is it merely a measuring device? Or is it something conscious, something aware? Could attention itself, your focused awareness, be a tool that changes the very state of the universe around you? And we won't stop there. We'll look at the possible connections between consciousness and physical reality. Ideas that stretch the boundaries of mainstream science and challenge everything we think we know about thought, perception, and choice. You'll encounter the concept of parallel realities. The possibility that every decision, every focus, might select from an infinite field of outcomes. And that your attention may be guiding which version of reality becomes solid, tangible, and lived. You'll also see how these quantum principles intersect with real-world techniques, like visualization and intention, and why so many people report dramatic shifts in their lives by simply learning how to observe with more awareness and clarity. This isn't science fiction, and it's not blind optimism. It's a rigorous, transformative exploration of the idea that you are far more than a bystander in this universe. You are a participant, co-creator, and observation, pure, focused, conscious observation, might be one of your greatest tools. Let's begin. In the world of classical physics, reality behaves predictably. Drop an apple and it falls. Turn on a light and the room brightens. No surprises, no mysteries. Everything operates like clockwork. But in the quantum realm, the microscopic world of particles and waves, none of that holds true. Logic unravels. Predictability gives way to uncertainty, and cause and effect become strange bedfellows. At the heart of this transformation lies a single experiment, a simple setup with staggering consequences. The double-slit experiment. Take a beam of electrons or photons or any quantum particle and fire it at a barrier with two slits. Beyond the slits is a detection screen, ready to capture where the particles land. Now, when only one slit is open, the particles hit the screen in a straightforward pattern as expected. But when both slits are open, something bizarre happens. Instead of producing two clusters where the slits are, the screen displays an interference pattern, a series of alternating bright and dark bands. This pattern is characteristic of waves interfering with each other, not particles. The electrons act as though they are not individual units, but waves that have passed through both slits at the same time and interfered with themselves. Particle going through two places at once? It defies logic. Yet the results are undeniable. But the real twist comes next. Scientists, understandably baffled, place a detector at the slits to observe which one the electron actually passes through. The goal is simple: catch the particle in the act. And just like that, the pattern changes. The moment observation is introduced, when the electron is watched, the interference pattern disappears. The electron no longer behaves like a wave, picks a single path. It acts like a particle again. This isn't an accident. This isn't noise in the system. It's a consistent, repeatable phenomenon. The very act of measuring, of observing, forces the particle to choose a state. In essence, the particle remains in a state of possibility until it is observed. Then it becomes actual. Let that sink in. Reality, at its smallest scale, doesn't settle until it is seen. Now consider the implications. This phenomenon is called wave function collapse. It means that all the possible paths a quantum particle could take, described mathematically as a wave function, remain superimposed, unrealized, until observation snaps them into a single, definite state. Observation isn't a passive act. It's a trigger, a choice, a declaration that forces potential to become form. Here's where things stretch even further. If observation collapses the wave function, what qualifies as observation? Is it a sensor, a detector, or something more? Some interpretations suggest that awareness itself, the conscious registration of an outcome, is required for collapse. In that case, the role of the observer takes on profound weight. It suggests a direct relationship between consciousness and the formation of physical reality. This is where the metaphorical curtain begins to rise. What you think of as the world may be the end result of a continuous process, an unfolding interaction between consciousness and quantum possibility. And that's not just poetic language. It's physics. The quantum curtain, once lifted, reveals a strange but consistent truth. The universe doesn't behave like a static object. It behaves more like a question waiting for an answer, possibility waiting for focus. So let's reframe the original question. What happens when you look? What happens is that something shifts. A state is chosen. Potential collapses into reality. And if that's the case at the level of electrons and photons, it's worth asking how far this principle stretches. Does your observation affect only the smallest scales of matter? Or does it ripple outward, influencing your experiences, your outcomes, your world? The quantum curtain doesn't just hide particles in dual states. It hides a deeper message. Reality is not waiting for you to arrive. It's waiting for you to notice. And when you do, it changes. In the next part, we'll push this idea further. We'll explore the strange, almost unsettling question. Are you changing the universe just by existing in it? Let's continue. In the quantum world, the simple act of looking changes everything. But let's step beyond the mechanics of the double-slit experiment. There's a deeper question that cuts through the heart of this mystery. One that physicists, philosophers, and thinkers have all struggled to define with certainty. What is an observer? The observer effect is not an abstract curiosity confined to lab experiments. It's a principle with staggering implications. In quantum mechanics, an observer is not merely someone watching passively from the sidelines. The term implies interaction, measurement, awareness. But the precise definition? That's where things get murky. Because the moment you try to define what counts as an observation, the answers begin to unravel. Consider this. If a particle remains in a state of probability until observed, what exactly counts as observation? Is it any form of measurement, say a machine logging data? Or is it the conscious awareness of that measurement? Does the electron collapse into a fixed state when the machine detects it, or only when a human reads the data? These questions strike at the foundations of physics and of consciousness itself. Some interpretations, like the Copenhagen interpretation, suggest that observation triggers wave function collapse. Yet they remain intentionally vague on whether this requires a sentient observer or simply a physical interaction. But other interpretations, such as the Wigner interpretation, take it further. They propose that consciousness, not just mechanical measurement, is the true catalyst. In this view, the observer isn't a passive instrument. The observer is an active participant in the shaping of reality. And that invites a chilling possibility. Your awareness may be doing more than receiving reality. It may be helping to construct it. Let's break this open. The universe at the quantum level does not behave as a pre-existing set of facts. Instead, it appears to be a shifting field of potentialities, states that might happen but haven't yet. These possibilities don't become real until they are forced by observation. Until then, they remain suspended in limbo, undefined, undetermined. But now ask yourself, what is doing the observing in your everyday life? It's your mind, your senses, your attention, the same force that determines whether you notice a passing face in a crowd or ignore a ticking clock is the same force that, at the quantum scale, influences the collapse of reality into form. Could it be that the mind is not merely tuned in to reality, but somehow entangled with it? And if so, what does that mean about your role in the universe? The line between subject and object begins to dissolve. In classical physics, that line is clear. The observer is separate from what's being observed. The scientist watches the stars, but the stars do not respond. That neat separation, though, collapses entirely in quantum physics. Here, the observer changes what is being observed. You cannot remove the observer from the equation. This leads to something extraordinary. The universe is no longer a detached machine. It's a dynamic system that interacts with you in real time. Your presence alters it. Your attention shapes it. Even your unintentional observation, simply being alive and aware, might be influencing how matter behaves, how events unfold, and how time flows around you. This is where the implications become unavoidable. If observation has power, and if you are a constant source of observation, then your existence is not neutral. It's not a background condition. It's active. Your consciousness might be part of the machinery of reality itself. That's not metaphor. That's not hyperbole. That is the question quantum theory forces us to consider. It also forces us to ask, how far does this extend? Could the same observer effect that changes the state of a particle in a lab be occurring in your daily life, at the level of attention, focus, and awareness? There's no definitive answer, but there are strong reasons to ask the question. Because once you realize that observation and existence are entangled, then choice starts to look a lot more powerful. Attention begins to resemble agency. Let's pause here. Think about every time you focused on a decision, a possibility, a fear, or a desire. What if each instance of concentrated awareness wasn't simply registering a condition, but influencing it? What if the trajectory of your reality bends ever so slightly in the direction of what you notice, what you give energy to? Not because of belief, but because of how quantum reality operates. This is not about magical thinking. It's not about denying the physical world. It's about recognizing that the fabric of that physical world may be bound to the act of perception itself. And the deeper we go, the less sense it makes to treat the observer and the observed as two separate things. In fact, the quantum field may be telling us that there is no true separation. Every point of consciousness, every observer, might be in constant dialogue with reality, not speaking words, not expressing thoughts, but transmitting intention, presence, and awareness. If that's true, then we must rethink the role of consciousness altogether. It's not just a private inner world. It's a bridge, a force that intersects with the unknown and calls it into being. So yes, your presence may be influencing the fabric of the universe. But the real question is, how intentional is that influence? Are you shaping reality on purpose or by default? Because the observer effect doesn't stop. Every moment you are observing. Every moment you are registering, focusing, reacting. And if those acts are entangled with the way quantum potential becomes real, then you are never not creating. You are never not influencing. You are never not affecting the whole. In the next chapter of this journey, we'll look directly at the role of consciousness in this process. Not just awareness as a concept, but the possibility that your mind is not just part of the system. It may be the switch that triggers material reality itself. We're only beginning to see how deep this goes. When you look at the night sky, you might see stars, galaxies, and the vast canvas of the cosmos. But behind that image is a quieter, more radical truth. Everything you see depends on how you see it. And the force driving that process. Consciousness. The idea is controversial, uncomfortable, dismissed by some, embraced by others. But it refuses to go away. Because the deeper we explore quantum physics, the more one question keeps rising to the surface. Is consciousness the engine behind physical reality? We've already seen how observation collapses quantum potential into physical reality. The particle doesn't take a defined position until someone or something measures it. But the next step is even more provocative. What if the only thing that can truly collapse a wave function is a mind? This is not mystical speculation. It's a formal line of inquiry in quantum theory. Take the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation, also known as the consciousness causes collapse hypothesis. It proposes that physical reality remains in a state of superposition, a blur of probabilities, until it is observed by a conscious agent. Machines alone are not enough. Mechanical detection doesn't finalize the event. Only conscious awareness does. That means the act of being aware might be more than just passive registration. It might be the final step in the creation of reality itself. In other words, matter waits for mind. The physics community is divided on this. Some reject the idea entirely, preferring interpretations that keep consciousness outside of science. Others, like Eugene Wigner, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, believed that the mind plays a necessary role. He argued that without consciousness, the collapse of the wave function doesn't make sense. That matter without mind is incomplete. Still, others attempt to sidestep the question altogether. They propose that everything collapses when it interacts with the environment, no mind needed. But that doesn't close the case, it just shifts the mystery. Because even then, the moment of awareness, the conscious acknowledgement of a result, still seems to act as a final stamp of reality. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a place where mind and matter are no longer separate. It suggests that consciousness and the physical world are part of a single, indivisible process, each affecting the other in ways we still struggle to understand. That's not soft science. It's quantum logic. And it challenges the most basic assumption of modern thought, that the external world is independent of the internal one. Let's turn this inward now. If your mind is entangled with physical reality, even in subtle ways, what are the consequences? Is every thought building or bending reality behind the scenes? Is every belief exerting force on the quantum field? The quantum view of consciousness suggests that awareness is not a byproduct of matter. It's not just something brains do. Instead, it may be foundational, a core ingredient in how matter takes form. Without it, the universe remains suspended in possibility. That means your mind isn't locked inside your body. It's not confined to neurons and synapses. It might be interfacing with reality directly, not metaphorically, not psychologically, physically. This invites new questions. If awareness is causal, if it shapes what becomes real, then could it also be selective? Could you direct it, focus it, use it? This idea connects immediately with ancient practices and metaphysical traditions, all of which emphasize the power of attention, focus, and intention. But now we're looking at it through the lens of hard science. We're not talking about wishful thinking. We're talking about a participatory universe. You don't just exist in this universe. You help complete it. You finalize it. You resolve its uncertain states, not by touching it, but by knowing it. And that raises the stakes. Because if your thoughts, your awareness, and your presence are all exerting influence, then the quality of those things matters a lot. What are you aware of? What do you pay attention to? Where do your thoughts go when you're not watching? Because if each act of attention contributes to the collapse of possibility into form, then your mind becomes not just a perceiver of reality, but a sculptor of it. Now let's be precise. This doesn't mean your every thought manifests instantly into physical form. That's not how quantum mechanics works. Superposition and wave collapse are processes governed by probabilities, not guarantees. The role of consciousness, if real, doesn't override all the natural laws of the universe. It works within them, but it does suggest that mind plays a role in steering probability, not forcing outcomes but biasing them, shifting the odds, influencing which branches of possibility become actual, and which ones remain in the realm of what might have been. And this is where the terrain becomes both empowering and humbling, because the moment you acknowledge the mind's role in shaping matter, you must also recognize its complexity. You can't separate mind from intention. You can't separate awareness from perception. You can't separate thought from reality. All of it is part of the same interactive loop, consciousness observing a field of infinite potential and helping that field crystallize into experience. So how do you use this? First, you stop pretending that reality is happening to you. It isn't. It's happening with you. Second, you begin to treat attention as sacred. Not in a spiritual sense, but in a functional one. Attention may be the most valuable currency you have in this quantum field. It may be the most precise lever you possess. And finally, you begin to explore consciousness not as something to understand, but as something to train. Because if your mind is shaping your world, even slightly, then clarity, discipline, and awareness aren't luxuries. They're necessities. The next step in this journey will take us to a place where possibility branches infinitely, where every focused desire, every intention, might not just influence one outcome, but choose from countless versions of reality. We'll explore the mechanics of choice, not from a psychological angle but from a quantum one, because consciousness may not only collapse reality, it may also help select it. Let's keep going. Reality is not one continuous stream of events moving in a straight, predictable line. That's the illusion. The deeper truth is more complex. At every moment, countless potential outcomes hover just beyond reach, unrealized, unchosen. The version of reality you experience isn't the only version that could have been. It's just the one that took form when you looked. Now the question becomes more pointed. Is your focus choosing your future? Quantum mechanics suggests that possibility exists before certainty. A particle is not here or there, left or right, until a choice is made, until observation collapses the wave of potential into a single event. That's not just a theory. It's what experiments continue to show. The implications of that are staggering. Because if the material world exists first as probability and observation selects one outcome over another, then your conscious focus may be doing more than witnessing reality. It may be participating in its selection. And this isn't limited to particles. Let's scale up the idea. Every thought you hold, every image you visualize, every scenario you replay in your mind, that's a form of mental focus. It's observation turned inward. But the line between inner and outer might not be as firm as you think. If your mind is bound up with quantum processes, then what you observe internally could be playing a role in which version of external reality becomes dominant. You're not just noticing reality. You may be narrowing it down. This brings us to manifestation, a concept that many dismiss as superstition or pseudoscience. But under the lens of quantum theory, it deserves a more thoughtful examination. Manifestation, stripped of its mystical language, is the act of choosing a desired outcome through sustained awareness and intention. It involves envisioning a state of reality that hasn't yet occurred, and holding that vision long enough and clearly enough to give it structure. This sounds suspiciously like quantum observation. The wave function holds many outcomes, but not all of them are equal. Focus may act like a filter, a biasing agent, not in the way that overrides physics, but in the way that influences probabilities, nudging reality toward one version over another. This is where the many worlds interpretation adds another layer. According to this interpretation, every possible outcome of a quantum event does occur, but in separate parallel branches of reality. Every time a particle chooses a position, the universe splits. One version for each outcome. This branching doesn't just happen with electrons, it happens everywhere, constantly. And in each branch, a different version of you continues. So then, when you focus your attention on a desired reality, are you choosing which version of yourself you align with? Are you shifting your conscious experience into a branch where your intentions have already materialized? It's a radical idea, but it aligns with quantum logic. You aren't commanding the universe. You're tuning to it, You're selecting a version of it with your focus, and that version becomes real for you. This framework changes the entire conversation about cause and effect. It reframes how we think about choice, action, and results. Let's say you're focusing on an outcome: success, health, clarity, purpose. The classical view says, work hard, change your circumstances, and over time your goal may be achieved. The quantum view doesn't contradict that, but it adds another layer. It says, by focusing your awareness on that outcome, you are reinforcing a path where that version of reality already exists. You are making it more likely to emerge from the field of potential, not by effort alone, but by alignment of mind. This isn't about belief. It's about resonance. The quantum field doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to frequency, what you consistently notice, reinforce, and attend to. The stronger your focus, the clearer your filter. And the clearer the filter, the more powerfully you bias the wave of reality in a particular direction. But this power is neutral. It works both ways. Fear, doubt, anxiety, these are also forms of focus. And they, too, act as observers. They, too, collapse reality into form. If your mind is constantly tuned to what you don't want, you may be reinforcing branches of experience where those outcomes become dominant. Not as punishment, not as superstition, but as a natural effect of observation. The quantum field doesn't judge. It only responds. That makes awareness your greatest asset or your greatest liability. This isn't just theory. The language of quantum physics matches what many ancient systems have always said: that reality is fluid, that attention is creative, and that the inner world precedes the outer one. But now we can say it in precise terms. You are not pushing matter around. You're influencing the distribution of probability. You are navigating an infinite field of possible states, and what you focus on acts like a compass. This makes your choices sharper. Not because they're magic, but because they're real. Every clear intention is a directional signal. Every visualization is a lens. Every sustained emotion is a frequency. And all of it is shaping which branch of reality becomes stable, persistent, and lived. So what do you do with this? You start by taking mental clarity seriously. The mind is not just a private thought engine. It is part of a larger mechanism, one that links observation with outcomes. The more scattered your focus, the more chaotic the potential. But the more aligned your awareness becomes, the more sharply reality seems to take form around it. Second, you become intentional with what you visualize, not in vague or passive terms. You treat visualization as quantum guidance, not as fantasy, but as navigation. You don't just hope for outcomes. You begin to select them with clarity. And third, you recognize that observation doesn't stop at the eyes. It extends to your choices, your emotions, your internal dialogue. Everything you're aware of is part of your observing system. The question is, are you using that system consciously, or are you letting it run on autopilot? Quantum mechanics has no concern for personal empowerment. It doesn't speak in moral terms or offer life advice, but it does offer this: reality is shaped by probability. And probability is not neutral when observation is introduced. So you may not be manifesting reality like a magician conjuring events from nothing, but you may be doing something even more profound. You may be selecting from the infinite and pulling one version of truth into form through focus alone. In the next chapter, we'll step beyond the material altogether. We'll explore how the limits of your perception may be filtering what you think is real, and how expanding that perception might be the key to accessing far more than you currently experience. Let's continue. You think you're seeing reality as it is, but you're not. You're seeing what your senses allow, and what your mind expects. The human perceptual system is extraordinary, but it's not complete. It's a filtering device. It reduces a vast ocean of information into something manageable, something familiar, something safe. But in that reduction, something is lost, something important, because what you can't sense, you can't observe, and what you can't observe remains hidden from your experience of reality. But that doesn't mean it isn't there. The five senses are just one layer of observation, a necessary one, but not the whole. beyond them lies a wider spectrum, one that includes thought, emotion, intuition, altered states, non-ordinary awareness. These are not abstract concepts. They are perceptual capacities. And in the quantum view, perception shapes reality. So if your tools of perception are limited, your access to reality is limited too. Let's examine what this means in quantum terms. If observation collapses possibility into actuality, and if observation is shaped by what you perceive, then your experience of reality is only as rich as the range of what you can observe. You are not perceiving an objective world. You are perceiving a version of the world filtered through belief, expectation, sensory thresholds, and neurological habits. In other words, what you notice becomes real to you, and what you ignore does not. This isn't just psychological. It's structural. If you look through a narrow lens, the field appears narrow. But widen the lens, and the field expands. Quantum theory doesn't say what is, says what might be. And what becomes actual depends on the interaction between the observer and the observed. But if your methods of observation only include physical senses, you're missing vast realms of what might be available. You are confined to a single layer of a much deeper structure. Multidimensional thinking is not science fiction. It's a necessity in a universe where time, space, and matter don't behave in fixed, linear ways. A multidimensional perspective means recognizing that what you can't see, measure, or predict still exists in potential, and may still be influencing outcomes. It means accepting that your perception is not the whole story. It also means training the mind to access different frequencies of awareness. Frequencies that allow you to observe beyond the obvious. Let's break that down. Just as a radio tunes to a specific station based on frequency, your consciousness can tune into different bands of experience. These bands aren't fictional. They're mental and energetic states that allow new forms of observation. A mind in a distracted, anxious state cannot access the same information as a mind in a calm, clear one. A mind fixated on what is wrong cannot detect what is emerging. A mind trained only on what it already knows cannot observe what it has not yet imagined. And that has consequences not just for clarity, but for the version of reality you lock into. Observation requires more than eyesight. It requires presence, alignment, and sometimes the willingness to disrupt old perceptual habits. Practices like deep meditation, lucid dreaming, sensory deprivation, and focused visualization allow the mind to stretch beyond the five senses. They quiet the surface, revealing subtler patterns underneath. These aren't tricks, they're tools. Tools that allow you to observe from a new angle and potentially collapse new kinds of reality into being. Because what you perceive in altered states isn't fake. It's different. It's part of the broader quantum field, one that isn't limited by language, logic, or even linear time. And that's crucial, because quantum physics tells us that time is not fixed. Events don't always unfold in a strict sequence. Cause and effect may be far more flexible than we assume. So when you expand perception, when you observe from beyond the surface, you may begin to interact with aspects of reality that aren't bound by what's already happened. You may begin to influence trajectories that haven't fully formed. This is where possibility becomes power. Let's return to belief for a moment. Belief is not just psychological. It's perceptual. It filters what you allow yourself to see. And because observation shapes reality, belief becomes a creative agent. If you believe something is impossible, you won't observe it when it appears. If you believe only in what you can measure, then only measurable things will register in your experience. And if you refuse to consider anything beyond the visible, then the invisible remains closed off to you by your own design. Multidimensional thinking means loosening those limits. Not abandoning logic, but recognizing its boundaries. Not rejecting the senses, but recognizing their scope. It means asking, what am I not seeing? Not because it's hidden, but because I haven't trained myself to look. This kind of mental flexibility opens new layers of reality, not by magic, but by participation. You begin to notice patterns, connections, subtle shifts in direction, and those observations, those expanded perceptions, may help shape which version of the world stabilizes in front of you. Not because you're changing objective reality, but because you are stepping into a deeper one. Now consider this. You might be moving through hundreds of potential versions of yourself and the world every single day without realizing it. Because your observation is on autopilot. Because your filters are locked. Because your attention is dominated by habit. But if you begin to observe with intention, if you begin to notice the unseen, you may start tuning into realities that have always been waiting, just beyond the edges of your familiar perception. That's not mystical. That's quantum. You don't need to leave your body or reject the physical world to think multidimensionally. You need only expand your frame of reference. You need only recognize that what you focus on, what you're willing to see, is what you strengthen in the quantum field. And that field is listening. To see more of what's possible, you must become more of an observer. Not passive, not reactive, but curious, open, and precise. You must learn to think beyond the literal, to feel beyond the obvious, to notice beyond the conditioned, because reality is not one-dimensional. Neither are you, and neither is the power of observation. In the next part, we'll move from theory to application. We'll look at how you can begin using observation consciously to guide your thoughts, your focus, and your awareness in ways that sharpen outcomes and align you with the versions of reality that reflect your truest potential. Let's go there. The theories have brought us this far. The science has hinted at something deeper. The implications have grown clearer with every step. You are not a bystander in this universe. You are a participant. And more than that, you may be a creative force within it. The field of quantum possibility isn't distant. It's immediate. It's all around you, responding not just to machines or instruments, but to the most subtle forms of awareness. Attention, thought, intention, observation. That means the tools of transformation are already in your hands. The question is, are you using them consciously or letting them use you? Let's start with the most fundamental one, observation, but not the kind you're used to. This isn't about watching something with your eyes. It's about the quality of attention you bring to everything. Focus is not neutral. Focus selects. It reinforces, collapses. So when you bring awareness to a thought, you give it weight. When you focus on a possibility, you begin to align with it. When you consistently observe a pattern, good or bad, you make it more real. That's the core principle of quantum creation. What you notice, you stabilize. Which brings us to your first tool, mindful attention. Noticing isn't enough. You must learn to notice with precision, to hold awareness without distraction, to become deeply present with a chosen thought, emotion, or intention, and observe it fully without doubt, without dismissal, and without interruption. This level of attention is rare, but it's trainable. Start small. Choose one experience today and bring total awareness to it. A breath, a word, the thought. Instead of rushing past it, pause. Observe it. Let your mind hold it in focus. That stillness, the act of noticing deeply, is how quantum effects begin to take root in experience. The next tool, visualization. Not daydreaming, not mental drifting. Visualization, in this context, is structured awareness. It is observation applied to an imagined outcome, a desired state, a future possibility. Here's the key. Visualization works not because it tricks your mind into optimism, but because it allows your awareness to begin collapsing potential outcomes into something more coherent, something more likely to manifest in the physical world. The clearer your image, the sharper your frequency. The more sustained your focus, the stronger your influence. You are not forcing reality to conform. You are tuning yourself to a version of it already present in the field of potential, and reinforcing that version until it stabilizes. This is why detail matters. Feel it, hear it, taste it. Anchor your visualizations with sensory input. When your observation becomes immersive, it becomes magnetic. That's not esoteric metaphor. That's attention applied with quantum precision. Third tool, intention setting. Most people move through life without clear intent. They respond, they react. But intention is not just preference, it is a directive force, a statement to the field. Intention focuses energy. It chooses direction. It tells your consciousness what to observe. and what you observe over and over becomes the shape of your experience. Don't confuse this with control. Intention isn't about forcing the world to obey. It's about choosing which version of the world you're willing to align with, and then holding to that choice through clarity, commitment, and conscious action. To do this effectively, your intentions must be simple, precise, present tense. They must feel like observations, not wishes. Say them as if they are happening now. I am aligned with clarity. I am tuned to abundance. I am noticing new opportunities. These are not affirmations. They are observational anchors. Fourth tool, emotional alignment. Thoughts alone don't move energy. Feelings do. Every emotion is a frequency, an internal resonance that influences your field of observation. When you visualize a future with excitement, joy, or peace, you imprint that vibration onto your consciousness. And that vibration, like a signal, tunes your awareness to outcomes that match it. But emotion works both ways. Fear, doubt, resentment, these aren't just passing moods. They are distortions in your lens of observation. They can bend your awareness toward versions of reality that reinforce them. That doesn't mean you suppress difficult emotions. It means you notice them. You bring observation to them. You face them without judgment. In doing so, you disarm their power to shape reality behind your back. Emotional mastery begins with emotional awareness. And emotional awareness is just another form of conscious observation. Fifth tool, mental decluttering. The field of possibility is sensitive to clarity. When the mind is cluttered with scattered thoughts, distracted loops, unresolved tension, your ability to observe cleanly breaks down. A chaotic mind sends mixed signals, projects interference. It weakens your alignment with the reality you want to experience. This is why practices like meditation, silence, and mental stillness matter. Not because they're spiritual, but because they sharpen your field. They clear the noise so that the signal can come through. In stillness, your observation regains power. Your awareness becomes a sculptor again, not just a sponge. Start with 1 minute, 1 breath, 1 thought. The goal is not emptiness. The goal is precision. Last tool, repetition and consistency. Quantum outcomes are shaped through probability. A single moment of attention has influence, but sustained attention? That's where patterns form. That's where reality bends. One visualization won't change your life. One intention won't rewrite your world. But a consistent stream of focused observation will. This is why so many people miss the mark. They try once. They look away. They scatter their focus. But in a quantum universe, the future belongs to those who observe it with constancy. The versions of reality you experience are not accidents. They're outcomes of repeated focus, reinforced observations made conscious or unconscious. When you bring consistency to your awareness, you begin to reprogram not just your mind, but your field. You reshape probability. You increase coherence. And reality responds not all at once, but inevitably. So now you know. Observation is not neutral. Consciousness is not passive. Reality is not fixed. You are not a spectator. You are not waiting for the universe to change. You are the interface between potential and form, and you have the tools to begin shaping what you experience, cleanly, deliberately, and intelligently. The quantum field is not reserved for scientists in laboratories. It's right here, all around you, inside you. The question isn't whether it works. The question is whether you're working with it. And if you are, then the most extraordinary dimensions of your existence are not waiting in the future. They're already here, just waiting to be observed. Now you begin.